Jedis for Jesus, and I just want to tell you, you need to see the whole picture. If you're not seeing the whole picture, then you're not going to understand what I'm saying right now. You're going to have to go ahead onto our YouTube channel and go ahead and subscribe there if you haven't already, but watch these videos. All the videos I'm putting on here is to educate you about what exactly is going on, because there's certain things I'm not allowed to say on this platform. The other thing that I'd like you to do is go over to our other channel, which is on Rumble, and you get the uncensored version there. Whether you're watching on your smart device or your computer, please, on the bottom, go ahead and leave a comment. It really helps out our YouTube channel. Thank you. Subscribe, give a thumbs up, and hit the bell. Thank you. What I'd like to talk about on this channel today is back in the 1940s. I'm going to go ahead and share a couple of videos on here with you. And the first one is what happened around 1940 and how long that went on and how people got deceived, weren't told the truth. Just the video explains a lot about it, and it's like you can't forget about what happened over 70 years ago. But people have. People haven't been around when we had that horrible attack in New York City on September 11th, 2001. There are people that graduated this year that weren't even born. This year is going to be the 20th anniversary of that horrible day. There's people out there that weren't around. And if things are being hidden or not being taught in school, then how are you supposed to learn history? And history repeats itself, especially if we don't learn from past mistakes. So here's that first video.
In the middle of May, a freight train arrived at the tracks alongside the brick factory. My family gathered our belongings and joined the crowd heading for the boxcars. Nobody told us our destination, but we feared it would be Nazi-occupied Poland. My family struggled to keep together. We all managed to get into the same boxcar. For the sake of modesty, men moved to one side and women to the other side of the boxcar. A guard slammed the door shut and bolted it on the outside. Now it was dark in the train. A small slit in the top corner allowed some light to come in. Hours later, the train began to move. The only source of air was that small slit in the corner. There was a bucket for the toilet in the middle of the car. Hours passed, and a night and a day, the bucket filled up. Peering out the slit, my father confirmed everyone's worst fear. The train was crossing into Poland. Our knowledge of what was happening to Jews in other countries partly came from these Jewish families who were sent out deported because they were not citizens. And so some of them here and there would escape and come back, a single person. And they would tell stories about how in Nazi-occupied Poland there were these people from all the other countries in Europe who were thrown out into the forests, literally there, plus the Polish people who were native, they were all being mowed down by Nazi gunfire. They just line them up and shoot people, and that's what was going on in Nazi-occupied Poland. And these people who came back and told us these stories, we didn't believe it. We did not believe it. We thought they're exaggerating. They had some trauma, they experienced something, but, so that was our knowledge of what's happening in Nazi-occupied countries. Not gas chambers, not crematoriums, not wholesale genocide, none of that. Finally, the train stopped. We are at some kind of a camp, my father announced. There are barracks here. This must be a work camp. Relief flooded over us. We were not going to be shot in the forest in Poland.
Most of the people on the train with Irene were unaware that extermination camps existed. They had no idea that they had just arrived at the most notorious of all Nazi death camps, Auschwitz-Birkenau. When Irene arrived in May of 1944, Auschwitz Nazis were murdering an average of 6,000 Jews a day, most of them within an hour of getting off the train.
There was a lot of shouting, leave everything behind, get out, fast. My mother quickly unpacked some clothing and told us to put on more layers. My head had already been shaved in the ghetto, so I was wearing a scarf on my head. I jumped out of the boxcar down onto the platform. About 2,000 other people emptied onto the platform. My family reached for one another urgently, trying to stay together in the swarm of people, the noise and the confusion. As soon as we were out of the train, all of our possessions were dumped onto the platform and were loaded into trucks. A guard shouted, men to one side, women and children to the other. In an instant, my father and 16-year-old brother were lined up in a huge column of men off to one side. I would never see them again. My mother, sisters, younger brothers, and I were in another large column of women and young children. A chimney was visible in the distance. Flames and smoke billowed from it. The column edged forward. When we reached the front, a dozen or more armed Nazi soldiers blocked our way. One of them held a small stick. The one with a stick motioned my sister, Serena, who was 17, to one side. In the next moment, he motioned my mother and two little brothers to the other side. They disappeared from view. Only my younger sister and I remained. I was holding her hand. The baton came down between us, sending my sister towards where my mother went. The Nazi guard looked at me and hesitated for an instant. Although I was only 13 years old and would have been selected with the children, my kerchief on my head and a big coat that I was wearing confused him. He motioned me in the direction where my older sister went and turned his attention to women and children lined up behind me. I hesitated to leave, trying to see whether my younger sister had caught up with my mother. It was not possible for me to see what happened to her in the crowd. I was devastated to think that she would be alone in this crowd, and so I lingered there for a little while.
This photo was taken by Nazi soldiers at the time Irene arrived at Auschwitz. It captures the moment when Irene lingered looking for her sister. Children didn't normally wear scarves on their heads, but Irene was covering her shaved head with a scarf and wearing the extra layers her mother gave her. It made her look much older and had likely just saved her life. 13-year-olds like Irene were generally seen as too young for labor and were immediately sent to the unfit line. Men, women, and children in the unfit lines were marched immediately to the gas chambers to die.
So this was actually going on, and the United States didn't do anything about it. This was going on from the late 1930s. And then as the time rolled on, 1941, 42, it got worse and worse. And then you just saw that video. How did we get involved? And the next video shows what happened for the United States to come in. As they say, they woke up the giant, the sleeping giant, as they put it. Unfortunately, this happened in Pearl Harbor, and some people don't even know where that is. That's in Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, and this is a little clip on what happened there that day. United States woke up and we signed a treaty between us and Japan. And on the other side of the globe, we were also fighting the Germans. And then we wanted to end the war. So the next clip shows how the war was finally ended.
I saw an aircraft, like a tiny silver drop, entering the sky above Hiroshima. I instantly recognized it as an American plane, as no Japanese aircraft could fly at that altitude at the time. It was just one plane, so I assumed that it was passing by as usual.
And I was counting. 1, 2, 3.
I was wiping the desktop. That was when the bomb was dropped.
It took about 45 seconds from the time the bomb left the airplane until it exploded. And I think there wasn't a man in the airplane that wasn't either timing it with his watch or counting or doing something. I was sure the bomb was a dud. I was sure it wasn't going to work.
After falling for 43 seconds, the time and barometric triggers started the firing mechanism. A uranium bullet fired down a barrel into a uranium target. Together, they started a nuclear chain reaction. Solid matter began to come apart, releasing untold quantities of energy.
So thank you for watching this video up to this point. Now, what does this have to do with the Daisy? What does this have to do with what's going on today in the United States, in the world? There's been so much fear brought on about what's happening. And again, like I said, I'm not able to say certain things here. On the bottom, there's a link to another video on another platform that you can go ahead and get more information there. But I'll let you know what this video has to do with what's going on today. We have to fight, and there are people out there that are fighting for our freedoms. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I believe that Jesus was born of a virgin. He grew up, he preached the word, he was sacrificed, nailed to the cross, died, and on the third day, he rose again. And we all need to believe in him. We need to have a relationship with him. And it's said, we will all meet God one day. And when I meet God one day, he's going to ask me, how do you like my son? And then I'm going to start talking about him, because I have a relationship with Jesus. Jesus knows me. And if you want to know Jesus, we have a way of doing that. And again, on the bottom, there's a link on how you can give your life to Jesus. This is Jedis for Jesus. Hope to see you someday in heaven.